Hi, you're right. I thought that the easiest thing, well, maybe just to try it to see if it helped, was to go through the work I wanted you to do this week. And please give me feedback on this. If you don't really think that this has helped, then let me know. Or if you think there's another way I could do it, then please let me know too. So you have got, as usual, three different tasks or sets of tasks to do this week. So the first is around poetry. Now, the first task is obviously to watch this video of me actually talking through what the work is. And what I thought would be really nice to do after all of the excellent work that you've done around poetry, and I was really impressed with the paragraphs that you wrote last week, so well done, because actually comparing poems and deciding on which is your favourite is actually quite a hard skill. So, what I thought would be a nice thing to do to give you a bit of choice would be to give you a task to read all of the poems in the week one childhood memories section. So, you've already read the first one, but I want you to reread it and then read the next three as well. And then you're going to have an opportunity to pick one of those poems to write a paragraph. So just one big long paragraph giving your personal response. And I'd really like you to follow these sentence starters here. So I like this because, it makes me wonder, because I want you to keep on developing that personal response. And I don't want you leaping yet to doing those kind of close literary analysis of the poems. The next task I'd like you to do, I'm going to go through with you now, and that's task 3 here, to write a letter to the poet explaining what you thought the poem was about, okay? And this video is going to help you to do that. So I'm going to exit this screen so that I can tell you what I'd like you to do. Now, you're always going to start a letter by saying, "Dear," whatever the poet's name is. And then I would like you to start off by introducing yourself. So you might say something like, "My name is, and I am a year 8 student at Morpeth School in Bethnal Green." And maybe you could say something like, "I really like poetry." Or maybe you might say, "I find poetry quite challenging because," okay? So give a little introduction so that the poet knows a little bit about you. The next thing you're going to do, because this poem is about you kind of suggesting what maybe you think the poem is about, remember this is your personal response. So I would say you want to write maybe 2 paragraphs giving your view on what the poem is about. Okay? And in these paragraphs, I'll give you some sentence starters below for the kinds of things that you might use to start off. But you might say something like, "In your poem," and then you're going to say the title here, "I was really interested by because it reminded me of because." And if it didn't necessarily remind you of something, maybe you could say instead, "I found the poem really unique because," okay? So maybe give a kind of personal view in that first paragraph about how the poem kind of made you feel. It made me feel because, okay? So that's going to be your paragraph 1. And then in your second paragraph, I think that's where you can come in with your view of maybe what the poem was saying. So you might say, "To me, the poem seemed to be about the phrase," and then you can pick out maybe your favourite quote from the poem, "made me imagine," and so I think that the poem is trying to say. And because we know that these poems, because we've been told, are kind of all in some way about childhood, maybe you could say something about whether this poem means anything for you specifically about childhood. So, "I liked that the poem discussed the theme of childhood because this means blah, 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 blah to me, okay? And then you might end by saying, maybe you can ask them a question at the end. Is this what you meant when you wrote the poem? Do you like that maybe people read your poems differently? Okay? And then you're going to sign off yours sincerely and your name at the bottom. Okay? So what I would recommend is you could pause the video at this point so that you are able to use this slide to help you to write your letter. Okay, so I would recommend just pausing the video for a second so you can get to this task. Okay, and then I'm going to go on to explain the next steps. So once you've done those poetry tasks, you have now got writing tasks to do. And because we were reading poems about childhood, I thought it would be quite a nice idea to write your own poem inspired by a happy memory. So I've put some steps below and I'm going to talk through them in this video to help you. So first of all, step one, as I've written here, is for you to close your eyes and think of a happy time. And when you think of a happy time, it can be something so small. So, for example, I might think of, my grandma is Danish, and she, throughout my childhood, every Christmas, she would make a very specific dish called æbleskiver, which are kind of, if you imagine a pancake rolled up into a ball, and you have to cook it in this special pan which has kind of semicircles so that the pancakes get made into a circle. And when I close my eyes, I am always drawn to that memory of my grandma making these æbleskiver for Christmas, and you have them with jam and you have them with a bit of lemon and with icing sugar, and it always reminds me of kind of Danish Christmas for me personally. So it can be something as small as that, you know, someone in your family making a special kind of food. And then you're going to take that image and write down all of the words you associate with that memory. So for me, it would be the gathering of my whole family in the kitchen. So maybe I'd describe the sounds of the pots and pans and the chatter that's going on. In Denmark, it's very kind of culturally important to have lots of candles around Christmas. So at Christmas time in my family home, there were always loads of candles and the lighting was always quite low, so I might focus in on that. And also my grandma, when she was a child, a pan of hot water fell on her, so her whole right hand is burnt, so she can't use her right hand properly. And so when I think of her cooking, I think of the details of how she uses her hands. Okay, so anything that you can remember about that memory, write down and make a mind map of it. And then sometimes, step 3, what's a good suggestion is almost to write down this as a story, okay? So think about how this memory could be turned into a story, and think about the feedback that I gave you last week about how you kind of pick out specific images in a poem that you like and see if you can try and use that to create your story. And then once you've written the poem down, always read it aloud, and it will help you to decide which parts you like, and maybe then you can cross things out, edit it, change some words, and then you're going to redraft your final poem, okay? So I hope that my example of a memory has given you a little bit of help with where you might go with this poem. I always think it's quite nice to think about memories to do with food, because often those are times that really stick in your memory, especially if there's a celebration which really matters to you in your religion or in your culture. Maybe that would be a good place to go. And then you've got your independent reading tasks. Obviously, you can do your own reading, or you can read Welcome to Nowhere with those links on YouTube. So what I need this week is a picture of your letter to the poet and then your own poem. And I'm really looking forward to reading those, and I'll be sharing the ones that are my favourite on Twitter, okay? On the school Twitter. So please let me know if you have any questions, and have fun with these tasks this week. Take care.